my name is Nicole, and thank you for tuning in to YouthLINE Live. When life gets challenging and we begin to struggle with the stressful situations, it's easy to feel isolated. During times like these, you may have feelings of withdrawal from socializing and the people around you. But this is the time when people around you should really be by your side. Having meaningful, healthy relationships helps you maintain a positive outlook as well as help fight off feelings of depression, anxiety, and anger. Sharing your feelings and concerns and hopes and dreams with others helps you stay connected and helps you maintain a healthy level of support. But what is a healthy relationship? Here with me today are Lily and David to help answer some questions.
Hi, I'm Lily.
And I'm David.
And together we've been friends for
a while.
A while, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or he thinks. But hi.
So welcome. Lily and David, what in your opinion is a healthy relationship? Whether it be with family, friends, significant others, or just the people around us?
Well, I think the main thing that everyone always talks about is, communication. As long as you talk, you could always work things out. Whether, you have problems or you don't, it's always a good thing to talk.
And on top of that, you also have to have trust. If you don't trust the person you have a relationship with, well, it's not going to work out in the long term.
How do we build and maintain these healthy relationships?
Well, it all counts. Well, it's effort, right? Any type of relationship, whether, like you said, family, friends, or a romantic partner, it's effort because things can't always fall on one side. Two people or many people together, you guys gotta work. So you, like you said, maintain that relationship. So you have to put in work.
Yeah, exactly. It takes both sides committing to make a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. So for a lot of us, the biggest stressor in our lives comes from interactions with other people. The people around us have the biggest effects on how we feel. They can make us mad and upset, they can hurt our feelings, and they can let us down. How can we eliminate those already existing stressful conditions in relationships and work better to creating healthier ones?
Well, I think it's important to deal with issues before they get out of hand. So if you have an issue with someone who you have a relationship with, then you wanna communicate with them and make sure that they understand the issue so that they can deal with it and you guys can work it out together.
I agree. Going back to your first question, it's, what makes it successful, right? It's communication. So like David said, prevent things before it even happen. But when things do happen, you have to sit down and reflect on what's happened and, what are some precautions you need to take, from bad things happening again.
So one of the key things I believe about healthy relationships is that you accept people for you are. Everyone has his or her own unique set of values, beliefs, interests, and experiences. Instead of trying to change the things, I think it would be better to show some curiosity and try to find out why people believe these things and how have their experiences changed or shaped their perspectives. It's important to show respect for each other's values and understand one another's points of view. How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's very important to be open to hearing other people's point of views. Not everybody was raised in the same culture. So I think it's people have very different views on many things. So it's very important to respect other people's opinions and views.
And, along with that, it's also important to accept differences, and that, there are things that you just can't change about a person, and knowing when to, step away from, situations and relationships, and knowing when to end things, and, so it's very important that there are good things, but when there are bad things, you either deal with them or, just accept that there are things that you cannot change. So, like you said, people are raised differently. They come from a different culture, and it's very important to keep an open mind and accept those things. But if it's too much out of your comfort zone, maybe it's not the right time to, have that type of relationship, whether it's friend or romantic.
So, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect. How do you think people can build that mutual respect, and what does it mean to have this respect for one another? What are some examples you can give the audience?
Well, I think it goes back to really listening to somebody. So if someone is trying to tell you something important about themselves, I think you have to really listen to what they're saying, not just hear what they're saying, but you have to actually listen. I think that's very important.
And listening, active listening is always a great skill to have, because in modern society we are taught that public speaking, it's a great skill to have. Talking, fill the silence, fill that empty space with words, but it's great to step back and listen and understand things to look for. It's what are your, like, for a romantic relationship, you need to be mindful of what your partner needs. So when they are talking, you gotta this goes with not everything's just words, right? You gotta read different things like body language, and it's important to listen in on what's being said, but it's also important to listen in for things that aren't said. So to build that respect, of course, listening and talking, it's communicating, it's a very big thing. And also respecting boundaries, that's another thing. Like that, drawing lines is part of respect, and upholding them, it's another part of it, right? And this all connects with, knowing when to stop and start, right?
So communication is another building block, like you guys mentioned, and it's very important when it comes to healthy relationships. It involves both listening and speaking, and you really have to hear what the other person is saying. How important is communication to you guys?
Well, I mean, like we've kind of mentioned, communication is one of, if not the most important thing in a relationship. You can't have a good relationship if you can't communicate with them. So it's very, very important.
Because, you just can't expect people to know what
like,
you want.
They can't read your mind.
Like, you're a different person, I'm a different person. We were raised in different, situations, no matter how much we are alike and we share the same hobbies, we do the same things. We're still different people that go our separate ways at the end of the day, right? And it's like I have a great sense of what David might like, right? What does David like? I don't know.
I don't even
know. I can't even bring that out like from the top of my head. I really have to think. David likes to have fun or whatever, right? And you see, we've been friends for a while, but like even I can't name it, right? It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of thought, and that's another thing. Like in relationships, you need to be mindful of what the person likes and what they feel, because what you do to people, there will be a reaction.
How can you show someone you're actively listening to them?
It's funny because in a conversation, it's always good to hear some like, oh yeah, keep going, or can you clarify?
Verbal
like
feedback.
Verbal feedback is so important, but I do know that people often get annoyed when someone's telling them a story and then the other person's just going, So don't be quick to give that feedback, because it might come off, it might have a completely different effect, and it might trigger some people. And so verbal feedback is one of them, and responding to it, right? Conversations, they go both ways. I talk, but I expect you to respond. So yeah.
On top of that, kind of with the verbal feedback, it's also important the tone of voice you use, because if you sound annoyed when you're listening, then obviously they're not going to want to keep telling the story. And like she said earlier, body posture makes a huge difference. If I'm over here pretending like I don't care, well, again, she's not going to want to finish her story. So I think those are two very important things as well.
And also, action, right? People always said, actions are better than words. So, after I've expressed what I like or don't like, it all falls on, what are you gonna do next time, right? If, for example, I tell David, I'm like, hey, I hate peanut butter. Can you not put that in my sandwich next time, right? And then David brings me a sandwich, and guess what? There's peanut butter in it. Was he listening?
No.
Exactly. So.
Okay. Here I have some qualities of a healthy relationship, and feel free to add as I talk or at the end.
Relationships. I don't know nothing about that.
Which would include that both people treat each other with respect, accept differences and embrace them, feel secure and comfortable with one another, are not violent with each other, can resolve conflicts, enjoy the time spent together, support one another, take interest in each other's lives, activities, schools, friends, family, or work, have privacy in the relationship, communicate clearly and openly, and encourage other friendships.
One of the things that really stuck out was have privacy in the relationship. As much as transparency is always great, right? So you're not lying or having the other person worrying about if you are truthful or not. But privacy is also important because going back to what we said earlier, we are different people, right? I can't live your life or you can't live my life, and it's great to have another person. I'm talking about this in a romantic standpoint, when people get together, and this happens when people move in together, after they've been in a relationship for a while. They catch themselves in a position where wow, I who am I as an individual, because you're spending so much time with the other person. So I guess privacy is having a piece of yourself, even though you are sharing a great part of your life with the other person, it's also important to have something of your own, because you're different.
Yeah, and adding on to that, you have to respect the other person's privacy as well. You have to trust that they're not doing anything bad behind your back, and so if you're gonna have privacy, you also have to respect their right to have privacy.
No, that's very good.
And you can't have too much privacy either. If I ask you some simple question what you have for lunch, you're like, oh, you don't need to know that. Really?
Right.
Just knowing what should be private and what shouldn't be, right? It's a balance.
Right.
It's good to have a balance of everything.
So it's important to be comfortable with whoever you have the relationship with, but also they have to respect your privacy. So it's, like you said, it's a balance.
Okay. So not all relationships work out, however. There are times you might find your time and energy are being consumed by relationships that are harmful to your well-being. Sometimes it's not easy to decide if troublesome ties should be maintained the way they are, worked on, or ended before they go any further. If you find that a relationship is not healthy and you've not been able to develop an open and respectful friendship, you may need to let it go. In many cases, we have trouble identifying these unhealthy relationships in our lives and don't know where to look or what may be some signs. So let's begin with, what are unhealthy relationships?
I could go on all day.
How about just give us your basic summary?
Well, I mean, it's everything we said about, healthy relationships with the reverse. It's, hiding too much, having no communication, no trust, and no listening whatsoever, and there's no respect. And, what about you, David?
Well, some people, when they think of unhealthy relationships, they might focus on the differences people have, but I don't think that's so much the problem. I think it's more about how you overcome those differences. So if if you don't use active communication to overcome the differences that the two people have, then the relationship will never work out and it will be unhealthy. So it really goes back to the communication and how important that is.
And like David said about overcoming these things, even experts have told us that every relationship fights. Healthy ones, they fight, right? It's about how you get over that and turn that into a good thing. And I mean, funny cute little video I found on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It was about this old couple, and everyone's like asking like how do you have a relationship for so long? They're like, never go to bed angry, right? You have to get over things before. You got to work it over, or else it'll just build up, and problems will always be there unless you face them.
So do you think it is possible to overcome an unhealthy relationship if you find yourself in one?
It really depends on the stage of your life, right? It's about how much you're willing to put into the relationship. For romantic relationships, at different stage of your life, you're gonna want different things, and since your priorities are different, it changes how much effort you are willing to give that relationship. So, a lot of people when they're young, they don't really care because, in their mind, they're like, I could always find someone. Versus, maybe a married couple would, put way more, like they'll, end up going to couples counseling because, they have invested so much emotion, time, and money into their relationship. So.
However, I don't think it's just the stage of life. I do agree, but I don't think it's just the stage of life. It's also the stage of the relationship. Mm-hmm. So if you've been in a relationship for a long time with a person and it's still unhealthy and you guys have tried to work on it many times, maybe it's time to just get out of that relationship. Also, just, if someone is being verbally or physically abusive, that's also probably a good sign that you want to get out of that relationship.
Right.
So what do you think? Well, how do these connections affect us? How do they affect our well-being?
Well, everything, right? Like, when you get really close together with a person, you have a romantic partner, you're already connected physically, mentally, and emotionally. So there's, it's very easy to do something and have that affect the person you are dating, because it's a privilege to be able to have that effect on people. And what was your question?
How do they affect our well-being?
Like I said, now I'm just thinking about like abusive relationships and how that definitely affects you physically, but emotionally it takes a big toll on the person because it's causing them so much pain, and it's just everything.
Yeah, like Lily said, like any kind of relationship, really, family, friends, romantic, if the other person is feeling down, it can make you feel down as well. So if it's an unhealthy relationship where the other person is constantly in a bad mood when they're with you, it can also put you in a pretty bad mood.
So just like I had the list of healthy relationship qualities, I also have one of unhealthy relationships. In an unhealthy relationship, one or both partners may try to control one or manipulate the other, make the other feel bad about themselves, ridicule or call names, dictate how the other dresses, doesn't make time for each other, criticize the other's friends, are afraid of the other's tempers, discourage the other from being close with anyone, ignore each other when speaking, control money or resources, push, grab, hit, punch, or throw objects, or use physical force.
And I agree with all these. And one thing I think, it's just certain things that stood out. It's like you should never be afraid of someone that's so close to you, that someone that you're supposed to love. Never should be afraid, never neglected, and because love you know, it needs, it's also a two-way street. You want, like, you love the person, but it's important for that person to love you back. So unhealthy relationships would go, like, unrequited actions would be like a big thing for unhealthy relationships.
Okay, thank you. Is there any last few things?
I mean, yeah, I think you put a lot of big ones on this list, and it's important to focus on those, but you also want to focus on the small ones, like, you know, one that says make the other feel bad about themselves. Like, you don't, it might be harder to notice, but it's definitely unhealthy as well.
Okay.
And hear it from me, I just got out of one, so communication is everything.
Okay, thank you. That concludes today's discussion. My name is Nicole, and thank you for joining me today, Lily and David. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning into YouthLINE Live.